Should you turbo your Miata? It seems like every Miata owner asks themselves this same question at some point. Well, on today's episode, we're going to walk you through why it might be a right choice, or honestly might not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration? I didn't mean to do that. Please, continue.
To get things started, we're going to go over my setup real quick to give you the context of what experiences I've had. So behind me is a VVT swapped 1.8 liter turbo. My setup is mostly a Flying Miata kit. We've got a Flying Miata intercooler, exhaust manifold, downpipe, a Garrett GT 2560R turbo. It's really a tried and true kit. Supporting mods are some custom intercooler piping, a 2.5-inch exhaust. On 14 PSI, the car actually makes just over 250 wheel horsepower and 225 foot-pounds of torque. So first thing you really want to think about is cost, and budget was really driving the horsepower that I could attain. So I'd suggest starting with a rough idea on what you're willing to spend. I've spent roughly $7,000 on the setup. It's fudged a little bit because there was a VVT swap that I went with aftermarket ECU with, and then I spent another $6,000 or so on the turbo setup itself. So I'm rounding up to $7,000 because you need that ECU. If you're starting with a stock engine, I'd say around $7,000 all in to kind of replicate something similar to what I've done. And I've really tried to do it the right way. I've got an ATI damper in there to try to keep the bottom end together. I also do have an oil cooler. I didn't think I'd need to run one, but the oil temps that I was experiencing on the highway told me otherwise.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
If you're on the low end, I really don't think turboing is the choice. I'd honestly suggest probably going with a VVT swap if your car is not already VVT. We managed to, with that swap, get around 50 wheel horsepower NA out of the car, and we did it for around $3,500. The next is, how much power do you want to make? You can make up to around 250 wheel horsepower on the stock bottom end, which is roughly where I'm at. Beyond that, you really need to consider building a bottom end, or know that at any point the bottom end could just, send a rod to the moon at any point. And that is the weak point of the bottom end for these cars. The first thing to go is typically the rods, and you're really pushing things at that power level. I also highly recommend checking out BOFI Racing. They're based out of the UK, and they have an awesome blog post about how to keep your turbo MX-5 alive. They break down all the weak points and what power level each part of the engine is good for. This company has a lot of experience with turbo Miatas, so I really do trust their judgment. Link down below. That's the other aspect of goals to consider as well. Power, and what do you want to do with the car? I want to be able to do everything with this car. I want to be able to daily it, have it be somewhat comfortable for day trips, maybe even do an overnight trip or two and through the Finger Lakes. I also want to be able to take it to the track and have it reliable enough to drive to Watkins Glen and back and do a track day there. So I'm pretty much asking to do all the things. Next thing is ownership. And what I mean by ownership is drivability and reliability. And this is where the video might take a little bit of a turn. I gotta call it as it is. The car is compromised drivability-wise. It's not as easy and light and happy-go-lucky to drive around town. I think I might have overbought with the clutch. I was really anxious about not slipping. I think I overdid it. So this winter, if I keep this setup, that's right, I said if, foreshadowing a little bit here, I'll probably go to a Flying Miata clutch that's not a 6-puck anymore. It's just too herky-jerky. It's inconsistent with where it grabs. I just don't like driving it around town. Reliability. So it's also, I hate to say this, but it really hasn't been as reliable as I would have liked. Stefan's K-swap, which he then boosted to 400 wheel horsepower, has been more reliable than this 250 wheel horsepower car sitting behind me. It just is what it is. We've replaced the front main twice, the cam seals twice, the rear main once, and it's already leaking again. Yes, that could be our PCV setup we didn't have quite right, so I'll take the fall for that one, but that has been an issue. It's been wet since pretty much day one. The next thing is the trans. I'm fairly sure that I've already blown through my transmission. I've got a 5-speed in there, and it sounds like I've got cut gears, man. It sounds like a race car with the gear whine. I'll double check the fluid that's in there. Nothing's leaked out, but I think the trans is gone. I started hearing this noise after a track day that we went to, and that's going to lead me into the other thing that I've had major issues with, and that is the CHRA, the center housing rotating assembly. It's really just the guts of the turbo. So I replaced this over the winter. Before even installing the turbo, we got a new one. Because I didn't know the history of the turbo, I had purchased it used, so I just figured I'll get ahead of the game, get a nice new one from day one, and it should be reliable, right? Well, apparently wrong. We went to a track day, 3 hours there, 3 hours at the track. Stefan and I shared the car, and 3 hours home. Seemed fine, but later that week, I went to the store, and that bearing was so unhappy. It sounded almost like a siren. It was making so much noise. Now, I spoke with our tuner about this and a couple other people. Not really sure why this would happen. It's either like oil feed issues or a bad part from the company. Of course, the company doesn't have any warranty on their CHRA, unfortunately. And the oil feed is off of a known port that a lot of VVT turbo setups run. It's right off the VVT solenoid. So I'd be a little surprised if it was that as well. So after that, and hearing my trans make all the noise, I really started to question this setup. I'm not gonna lie. I really want this to be a turnkey car and not have to be wrenching on it. I want to work on the car, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to be forced to work on the car. And in my opinion, I'm just not making enough horsepower to have that kind of ownership experience. So this leads me into, do I recommend turboing your car? And I gotta say, guys, it's not a slam dunk in my opinion. Part of me just feels like having a turbo Miata was like this exclusive club that everyone wanted to be a part of. And I never thought I'd be invited. But lo and behold, I actually built one. And I got to the club and looked around and kind of wasn't that impressed. I've watched so many other people turbo their car, like Marty from Mighty Car Mods, and obviously Greg, Miata Dad. And it just seemed like it was a no-brainer. And I don't think it's a no-brainer. I really don't. If you want to track your car a lot, I don't suggest a turbo at all. I know we're building a track car this winter, but I want to be able to drive this to the track and do track days. Stefan and I can't both drive the car at once. We're going to have to do some schools, especially some novice schools, and this is going to see some track time because of that. Also, by going back to the old CHRA, I've lost spool time, so it's definitely more of a laggy setup. Initially, it felt like an NA car. Thing could spool so fast. To 7 pounds, I couldn't floor it before it hit 7 PSI. It's not the case anymore. It does have a little lag, and that does take away from the driving experience a little bit. What can I say? I guess I like that NA feel, that purity. I am seriously considering selling the turbo parts and going back to NA, maybe go ITB. I think it would be a lot of fun. I know Greg is trying to chase Quinn with his 180 horsepower NA setup on a stock bottom end. Maybe I go back to NA and try to chase Quinn with Greg. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And it would definitely be a more reliable, more simple setup than what I have behind me. Or should I relax a little bit and try to work through these issues this winter and have another crack at it next summer? I am seriously torn between these two options. But what do you all think? Have you had some experiences similar to mine with a turbo car? Would you be interested in seeing an ITB build? Let us know your thoughts down below. Hopefully you learned something from this. That's really was my goal with this video. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below as well. Stefan and I read every single comment. We will respond to you. If you want to have more of a conversation, reach out to us on Instagram. We're happy to help. Being a part of this community is honestly more fun than creating the content. We've met so many great people over the past year, and we just want to give back to the community and help anyone else trying to build their Miata as well. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. And as always, subscribe, and thanks for watching.
You were saying something about...
Not turboing your Miata.